Hello and welcome to the Premier League Club season rating with me, Kevin Ferris. In this video, I'll be running through who's had a great season, who's had a terrible season, and who's been straight down the middle. I'll be rating each club from 1 to 10 based on how their season has went this season. Without further ado, let's start with the first club. The first club is Arsenal. I would give them a 9 out of 10, mainly because they had a title challenge well ahead of schedule. Absolutely fantastic. They didn't win it, but they had a title challenge. They have Champions League football next season. They have very promising players in Odegaard, Saka, Saliba, Martinelli, all coming up and having a big impact on that club. Plus, they've just had a fantastic season. Mikel Arteta has just done a wonderful job all season with them, and that's why they get a 9 out of 10. The reason they don't get a 10 is because they didn't win the title. If they'd won the title, they would have got a 10 out of 10 for me, and that would have been probably one of the easiest ratings to give, but they get a 9 for just about missing out on the title in the end. Aston Villa, I would give them an 8 out of 10. They had a terrible start to the season, 6 defeats in their first 11 games. They ended up sacking Steven Gerrard halfway through the season. That was really what's brought them down from a 10, because everything since Unai Emery's come into the club, they've just been fantastic. He's led them to a Europa Conference League finish, which is sensational. Remember, Villa were in an early relegation shout at the start of the season. I think I would have given them a higher score. The reason they get an 8 is because they just had an incredible second half to the season. They would have got higher if they maybe had pushed for Europa League, because at one point under Unai Emery they were 6th and pushing and in a very comfortable position, better off than Liverpool and Brighton, teams that have ended up finishing above them, but they were in a better position, Villa, and I think they could have pushed for that, and they would have got higher if they were more consistent throughout the season. But an 8 out of 10, a fantastic season for Villa, and a lot to look forward to for next season for Villa fans. Bournemouth, I would give Bournemouth a 7 out of 10. They achieved their objective. They avoided relegation. Fantastic. That's exactly what they wanted to do, of course, when you come up. That's the first objective of a club that's just been promoted, to avoid heading straight back down. They've done that. They also unleashed a promising young manager in Gary O'Neill. Fantastic. What he's done at Bournemouth has been wonderful. They started the season pretty poor with Scott Parker. Not a great start to the season for them. But they got Gary O'Neill. They stuck with Gary O'Neill after he was under pressure halfway through the season. They kept him, and look what the job that he's done for them. Incredible job. Just shows you what keeping your manager can do for a football club. And it's a good foundation for them to build on and to probably consolidate their Premier League status. Fantastic season. Brentford are next. I would give Brentford a 7 out of 10 again. They would have had another very positive season. Thomas Frank's done another very, very good job there. A solid top half finish. Brentford, were championship, and ever since they've been promoted, they have been a very, very good Premier League side. The atmosphere helps at that football club, and that's just fantastic. 9th place finish. They could have got European football, which I think would have pushed them up a lot more, but it's not the objective. They got a top half finish and pushed for Europe. They didn't get Europe in the end, but they done really well. Plus, they had huge results this season. They done the double over City, the only team to do that. They won against Liverpool in fantastic fashion, beat United at the start of the season, beat Arsenal as well, or got good results against Arsenal. Fantastic results for Brentford this season, and that just makes their season even better. 7 out of 10. Next up are Brighton. Brighton couldn't have had a better season. I give them a 10 out of 10. Incredible this season. To get European football for the first time in the club's history, Roberto De Zerbi has done a sensational job. But not only De Zerbi, the whole football club. The hierarchy of Brighton has been run impeccably over the last few years since their Premier League promotion, I think 7 or 8 years ago now. Fantastic. And they get European football. They keep building every season, and they just have everything in place. They seem like a really, really well-run football club. And a perfect example of that is they lost their manager halfway through the season, and they had a replacement right in. And look what Roberto De Zerbi's done. Incredible job. Really, really good. Plus, they get a lot of profit. They uncover these massive talents, bring them to their football club, progress them a bit, and sell them on for big money. is a really, really good model. Fantastic Brighton, 10 out of 10. Complete contrast then, Chelsea are next. They got a 3 out of 10. They had a terrible season. You know, very inconsistent all the way throughout the season. There's moments you think, oh, maybe this could be Chelsea. Maybe they're clicking into gear now. Maybe the players are actually starting to gel. But no, they have their lowest Premier League finish ever, lowest points ever. They spent over £600 million, and so far, really, there's not much to really show for it in terms of results and performances. It's just not happened yet. Give them another season, but this season's been a total write-off. They sacked 2 managers in Thomas Tuchel and Graham Potter. They brought in some fella for 3 games, and then they brought Frank back, and he made it worse, arguably, Frank Lampard. So, terrible season for Chelsea, an overall season to forget for them. Next to Crystal Palace, I mean, there's not much special to say. I give Crystal Palace a 5 out of 10. It's an okay season. They got a solid finish in the Premier League, 11th place. You know, Crystal Palace are that inoffensive club. They never really push for Europe, and most of the time they're not in a relegation battle. They were at one point in this season, but then they sacked Patrick Vieira, got Roy Hodgson in, and things improved for there, and they finished 11th. Fantastic, but nothing special for them this season. A decent season for Crystal Palace. Maybe they can start trying to push for Europe next season, or even a top half finish. Who knows? But this season, 5 out of 10 for me. Everton, I give Everton a 1 out of 10. Mainly because the only reason they get a point this season, a single point, is because they stayed in the league. They have had a horrendous season. All the way throughout. They only get the point because they were safe. That's it. If they had got relegated, they would be on 0. That's the only reason they're not on 0. Sean Dyche saved them and kept that Premier League status. You know, 70 straight seasons in the English top flight is incredible, and that is the legacy of this football club that Everton hold. And how it's got to this point is baffling. They've had another terrible season, and luckily they've stayed up. But you know, if they don't get their act together, one season or another, they will actually end up down in the Championship, and it's very, very hard to get back out as how competitive it is. Fulham, 8 out of 10 for them. You know, they got safety. Of course, they got promoted. You know, a lot of teams forget that. They've had such a good season. They forget they actually only came up this season. Fantastic. They got a top half finish, which is wonderful. Really, really good for Fulham. 10th place. Very, very solid finish. You know, Marco Silva has done another amazing job at Fulham, you know, bringing from the Championship, and hasn't really altered the way they play, and I really respect that. You know, a lot of managers play really, really good football in the Championship, bring their team up, and then play really defensive football and end up getting relegated. Whereas Marco Silva said, no, we're playing the way we've played, we're not making too many changes. Of course, we're going to suit the Premier League system. We're not going to be stupid about it, but we're going to play nice free-flowing football, and they've been fantastic to watch all season. They've overachieved their expectations massively. Of a relegation fight was what everybody expected, but overachieved. And Marco Silva, probably manager of the season candidate, really. And they were in the top 6 at one point as well, Fulham. 8 out of 10. Fantastic season for them. Leeds, 0 out of 10. You can't give them a single point. They got relegated. You know, they've been in the Premier League for a few seasons. They've been in this position before. They've saved themselves previously. You know, the danger, the clues were there last season. They saved themselves in the final day last season. The writing was on the wall. If they didn't improve, they were going to be relegated, and they have done. They had 3 managers this season. You know, Sam Allardyce in the end, awful, couldn't have done anything. It was beyond him. Jesse Marsh, who played really nice football, and I thought he was a really good manager. I thought they sacked him too early. You know, it's Leeds. They're not going to be winning in the top half. They're going to need to improve for that, and they didn't have the players good enough to do that. He was doing okay with them, I think, to be fair. Then they brought in Javi Gracia, and it really just confused things, because they played 3 different styles of football. You know, Jesse Marsh, free, open, attacking football, lovely to watch. They conceded so many goals, but yes, that was Leeds. They were under Marcelo Bielsa and doing that too. They just needed better players. Javi Gracia, what was that? I mean, he didn't even know what he wanted to play. And then Sam Allardyce, of course, completely different. No consistency throughout the season, and their players just weren't good enough in the end to keep them up. They were a bit better last season, but still not good enough. Leicester are next. They get a 0-2. I mean, they've been relegated as well. I mean, Leicester finished 8th last season. 8th. You know, no one could have predicted Leicester getting relegated this season, but it has happened. It's been a shambles all season. They just haven't had good enough players. They've sold really good players. They sold Wesley Fofana. It was a really, really promising centre-back. They just don't have enough good players to see them out of that position. But did we see them being in a relegation battle? No. Expected a bottom half finish, but not a relegation battle. Far from that. And Brendan Rodgers, sacking Brendan Rodgers, I think ultimately they would probably say it's the right decision because he wasn't getting good enough results. But could you argue that Dean Smith's got a better result since then? They didn't have a manager set up when they sacked Brendan Rodgers, which is a shambles from Leicester's point of view from the top. They brought in Dean Smith. Dean Smith really couldn't do very much. What was he meant to do? You can't create miracles, it's just not possible. Why did you sack Brendan Rodgers? I think that was a stupid decision from my point of view. Not good enough. Leicester get a 0. Next, Liverpool. Liverpool get a 5 for me. It's just not good enough all season. Similar to Chelsea, I would give them a bit better than Chelsea. The reason I give them a 5, which was better than Chelsea, they've had a strong end of the season. Unbeaten in their last 10 games. That strong finish. It's similar of Liverpool, remember in the COVID season. Liverpool had a terrible season with injuries and things, and just things weren't going well. But they had a really good end of the season, really positive, and led them on to a possible quadruple run in the season following. So I wouldn't give Liverpool too harshly. They were very inconsistent, not good enough throughout the season, but they got huge wins. Remember, they beat Man United 7-0, they beat City, of course, at one point in the season. They beat Bournemouth 9-0, Leeds 6-1. I don't think I'm missing anything in there. I don't think so. But huge wins like that brings it up. Plus, they have promising signings. Cody Gakpo's looked like a really good player. Darwin Nunez as well looks to be a promising player that is very raw, needs to be coached a lot more, but very promising players. 5 out of 10 for Liverpool. On to the champions then. Manchester City, 10 out of 10. You really can't say very much. Perfect season. They won the title. They had a title race, which brought the story. They were in a difficult position. Arsenal had the lead. City came back and won it with an incredible run to the end of the season. They lost on the final day, but it was already done by then. It could be the first trophy of a possible treble. Only one team's done that. Man United back in 99. It could be their first trophy of a possible historic treble. Plus, Erling Haaland's a robot. When you have him in the team, you're not going to have... each game you're probably not going to have lower than a 7 out of 10 in terms of your performances. Fantastic season for City. 10 out of 10 for the champions. Their City rivals are on the way next. Manchester United, I'll give them an 8 out of 10 for Manchester United. Some would say that they could probably have 9 or 10, but I think a trophy in the first season under Ten Hag is very, very good. They got the top 4. They have an FA Cup final to come, so they could have 2 trophies, and they could do a cup double in his first season in charge. A very positive start. That's why they've given them an 8 out of 10. But losing 7-0 to Liverpool, although some would say it's a fluke result, but they've lost so many games against the top sides this season that I think that's kind of swayed things, that they just aren't able to compete at that level yet. They can easily beat the lower teams, but it's about competing with those teams that they're fighting with trophies for, and I don't think they've had that yet. They've had enough evidence for me to give them a 9 or 10, and that's why I give them an 8. Newcastle are next. Similar to Brighton, they've just had an incredible season. 10 out of 10. Champions League football. Many Newcastle fans in one of the games before they get Champions League football, a lot of them are saying, I would have been happy with a top half finish. To get Champions League football is beyond the wildest dreams of anybody in football. No one could have predicted that Newcastle were going to be up there this season. Eddie Howe's done an incredible job this season, and undoubtedly my manager of the season. Sensational job to bring a football club from being almost relegated last season, to being in that relegation battle and staying safe, and then to push them on, to build from inside the club, organically improve players, coaching them to make them better, not just splashing money to make the club better. They're well ahead of target, they're well ahead of their schedule, but this season, incredible. 10 out of 10. On to the last 5 clubs then. Nottingham Forest, their next. 7 out of 10 for me for Forest this season. As I said with both Fulham and Bournemouth, their targets this season was to avoid relegation. Steve Cooper's done a wonderful job at avoiding relegation for Forest. How he's done that, after, we talked in January, or was it it was both windows. They just were buying players left, right and centre. They were buying everybody. There's not a player that they probably didn't have a conversation with to sign. Over 30 players signed. Incredible job to deal with that amount of players and to get the results week in, week out. An incredible end of the season. They got some big results towards the end of the season. Of course, they finished the title race. But the same with Bournemouth and Fulham. A really good foundation to build on next season and to consolidate their Premier League status. Possibly even push for a mid-table finish next season. Really, really good from Forest. To the final of the 3 relegated teams, Southampton, 0 out of 10 for Southampton. It's a common theme. I can't give a relegated team a single point. When you're relegated, you just don't deserve anything, really. You just weren't good enough over a 38-game season, and that is obvious. Relegated, they were not good enough. For Southampton's target to be avoid relegation after so many years in the Premier League is pretty poor. It just shows how mismanaged the club has been over the last few years. The last 2 years, I would say. They sold their best players, loaning them out and selling them. Yes, it's a sustainable method, but they haven't recruited the way they used to. Remember, they had Sadio Mane, Virgil van Dijk, Alex Oxlade-Chamberlain, etc., etc. They recruited these really, really good talents, like Brighton are doing now. Recruited these really good talents, sold them on for a good bit of money, and kept bringing those players in to keep the club's performances running. But recruitment has slipped well below level. The quality of the squad is not good enough. And it hasn't been for the last 2 or 3 years. That's why Ralph Hasenhüttl has lost 9-0 twice, because they just haven't been good enough on certain occasions. The only positive I'd give them this season is they beat Man City in the Cup. That's it. That's the only positive that Southampton have had to their season. Plus they had a dramatic final day against Liverpool. That's it. What else have they had? They're going to the Championship and they just need a reset, really. That's as simple as that. Tottenham, 4 out of 10 for Tottenham. A very poor season for them. I would give them a bit better than Chelsea because, annoy Chelsea fans. But they've had 2 interim managers. I mean, what? How's that possible? 2 interim managers. They sacked an interim manager. What the hell? Christian Stellini came in after Antonio Conte. He was useless. He didn't change things. Literally, it was Antonio Conte with a mask on. That's all he did. He did the same thing Antonio Conte did, but he was a different person doing it. Useless. And Ryan Mason, he's done a decent job. Decent job. Whether he'll get the permanent job, I very highly doubt it, but you never know. They don't have European football. They finished 8th. Just no consistency throughout the season. And the question really is, where do they go from here? Who do they get? What do they want for the club? They need another reset. How do they do that? I really do not know. Maybe European football is kind of the reset that they need. Just sit out of Europe for a season, get it fixed. The way Arsenal done it. Get it fixed. Get the culture of the club. Get the toxic players out. Get the manager in and build from a system. They've done it with Mauricio Pochettino and look how well that done for a good few years. Build that. West Ham United. They would have a very, very poor season. I'd give them a 5. I think that's quite generous, actually, because West Ham have had a really awful season, to be fair. When you think about it, they've been that club that's really not been in much conversations. They were in a relegation battle for quite a while. West Ham United in a relegation battle. After David Moyes has brought them into Europe in the last few seasons. Just not good enough. The European run basically sees them to where they are at the minute. That in terms of the points that I'm giving them, 5 out of 10. They've had a very poor season. Moyes is probably lucky not to be sacked, because in that period, many managers were just getting sacked left, right and centre for not doing enough. And he was probably lucky not to be one of them. Although I don't think he should have been sacked. Probably deserved to be, based on what other clubs were doing. But they have a lot to improve on, West Ham. Hopefully they get a trophy. That would make their season a lot better. A trophy for West Ham would be fantastic. A European trophy. First European final in 47 years. Congratulations to West Ham. Fantastic. But in terms of Premier League season, just not good enough. And then to the last club. Wolves. Again, similar to Crystal Palace is what I said earlier. Just nothing special. They've not really done much this season. Wolves, nothing special. They sacked Bruno Lage. Was that even this season? They sacked Bruno Lage, I think, earlier in the season. Lopetegui's starting to build something, but I haven't watched them enough this season because they've not been entertaining enough to watch. And if I have watched them, I actually don't remember it. But yeah, nothing special about Wolves. They're that middle of the road Premier League club at the moment. Same with Crystal Palace. They need to bring something about the club to either push them up or push them down. do something. But not really much to preach about about Wolves this season. 5 out of 10. Pretty basic. Not much to talk about there. And those are my Premier League club season ratings. All 20 clubs rated from 1 to 10 based on their seasons. If you agreed or didn't agree, let me know in the comments. And do like if you enjoyed this video. We have a lot more to come over the summer here in LFS, videos like this, so do stay tuned for those. But from me, have a very good week, and I'll see you on the podcast at the end of the week.